Okay. Welcome back. Last week I shared my favorite new podcasts, and this week I'm sharing my favorite more established podcasts. As I said in last week's video, I love podcasts, but I'm trying to keep my intros short, so here's a bunch of podcasts I love. Join the party. I touched on this podcast in my 2017 favorites video, linked in the description, obviously, but I love it enough to talk about it twice. This is a D&D podcast, but you don't have to play D&D or be familiar with D&D to listen to it, because the first episode gives you instructions and all the insights that you need into how it works. It's a D&D podcast, it's a storytelling podcast, it's a friendship podcast. It's really, really good. Basically, a group of 4 friends get together, play D&D, and record their adventures. It's a lot of fun, and I think you'll enjoy it too. Welcome to Night Vale. Okay, yes, I know everyone has already listened to Welcome to Night Vale. I know. But I took a year off listening to it, I just wasn't that invested, and I started listening to it again recently, and it's still just as good as it was 5 years ago when I started listening. Missing and Murdered. I haven't listened to season 2 of this podcast yet, but I did listen to season 1 and the teaser for season 2, and I told you in my 2017 favorites video how much I loved season 1. So I have no doubt that Connie Walker is going to do an amazing job with season 2, finding Cleo. As I understand it, this season is about a girl who was taken by social services from her Indigenous family in Canada and adopted by a family in the US. Then she tried to hitchhike back home, and she was picked up by a bad person and assaulted and murdered, and her family has no idea where she is even buried. Connie Walker is an incredible reporter. Station to station. I actually had a hard time starting this one because the audio is quite low when listened to with a Bluetooth speaker in my car, but with headphones, it's perfect. Station to Station is about a scientist on a research vessel in the Arctic. While she's aboard the vessel, she discovers that her best friend and research partner has disappeared. In addition to doing her actual research, she's trying to figure out what happened to him and what he was working on before he disappeared. If you want some mild horror, giant conspiracy, and empowered women, this is the podcast for you. Podgressive. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this in previous videos, but apparently I didn't check that when I wrote the script. Either way, I'm going to mention it again. This is a podcast about politics, specifically Missouri politics, though they do touch on national politics as well. This specific one, as well as Heads Up Missouri and State House Blend Missouri, are really only relevant for people in my state, but I know Kansas has a State House Blend, and I'm sure other states have podcasts about their politics as well. State House Blend, Missouri, and Kansas are both NPR podcasts, so your states might be through NPR. The point is, I recommend looking for a podcast as a way to keep up with the politics in your state. The Far Meridian. This podcast is about a lighthouse keeper whose lighthouse keeps moving. Every day she wakes up in a different place. Also, Perry, the lighthouse keeper, has struggled with agoraphobia, and to throw in an additional complication, her brother Ace has been missing 4 years, almost as long as she's been struggling with agoraphobia. That sounds really complicated, but it actually flows really well. I love this podcast, and it only took me about 3 days to listen to. And if that doesn't convince you, I convinced my not very technologically savvy mother to listen to it, and she loved it. Okay, last podcast. Queery by Cameron Esposito. I also mentioned this in my 2017 favorites video, but it's back now, so I'm mentioning it again. Queery was on Feral Audio, which shut down, so there was a few months where there were no new episodes. But now it's back! I'm very excited. I love this podcast. Queery is hosted by Cameron Esposito, the comedian, and she talks with people of all stripes under the LGBT+ rainbow. It's really conversational, it's really casual, it really is the best conversations. This is gonna sound cheesy, but this podcast feels like drinking wine or whiskey with my very cool aunt and getting life advice from her and her very cool friends. 2 of my favorite episodes are the Mary Lambert episode and the Evan Rachel Wood episode. Initially, I listed about half the episodes as my favorite episodes, and that should tell you how much I love this podcast. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you liked it, maybe hit the like button. It does help with the algorithm, especially now that YouTube has taken away my partner status. Who knew? I knew about it. The description box will be full of links to podcasts and to my other podcast-related videos. There are 4 of them? Maybe? If you want more of my sunny personality, subscribe. And if you have a podcast you want to recommend, tell me about it in the comments. I hope you're well. Honestly, I really want to make a podcast, but that seems like a lot of work I'm not prepared to do with a lot of equipment I don't have, and I don't have a really good idea. eyes are playing tricks on me? Because I could have sworn that for a second I just saw a person outside that window, but there's nowhere for them to go that I wouldn't have seen them. And they were kind of transparent, so either I saw a ghost or my eyes are playing tricks on me, and it's just stuff moving in the wind and the fact that I'm focused on the camera and not the window. I don't know, I think everywhere is haunted, so